We humans may think that we are special in having words differentiate us from all of the other beings in the world. However, words are not things themselves, but are just labels. They are like those we put on clothing and can give us details about things that we are wearing. But that is all that they do. The fact is that words don't actually have anything to do with directly experiencing the things that they stand for. We may be convinced otherwise, but according to Buddhism, they don't. It says that we confuse the meaning that we attach to something with the thing itself. Things being as they are, they obviously don't need the meaning that we give them. Our Dharma eye is the eye that sees this truth about things. But that truth is the truth of no meaning, as it sees things as they are and not what we mean them to be. Nevertheless, it would be utter foolishness for me to thereby say that words are not necessary. Of course, I'm using them right now, since they are merely labels. For we certainly cannot get along without what words provide us, and even though all the other creatures of the world seemingly are able to. The Buddhist meaning of two of the seemingly innumerable words that we have for things, nothingness or emptiness, are good examples of words not being the thing as it is. The two refer to a reality experienced in meditation that cannot be expressed in words. While words tend to keep coming into our minds when we start to sit, but if not paid attention to, they tend to appear less and less, of course, until none remain. The result is what we label emptiness or nothingness. What is suspect here is whether such state defined by not having words can be described with words. After all, it is words that emptiness and nothingness are empty of. Conversely, if words are appearing in our minds, we cannot say that our minds are intrinsically empty or have nothing at all. That words and emptiness or nothingness are like life and death in never existing together suggests that words are not suitable for defining emptiness or nothingness. These two are words, of course, but they cannot describe what we experience in Zazen. Though being words, they are labels, and as such are of use in thinking. I'll try that one again. By the way, I was called in as an emergency talk giver, so I had to do this rather quickly. Okay. So let me start this one again. Though being words, they are labels, and as such are of use in thinking. Though they are that, meditation functions to reveal what is beyond the words making up our thoughts. This is why Dogen recommended us to think non-thinking or to think beyond thinking. The words that Buddhists use to describe the real characteristic of things are suchness or thusness. It's the same word that they are both translations of the Sanskrit tatata. As you may recognize, one of the names in which Buddha is introduced in sutras is as the Tathagata, the thus come one, someone who is just there without extra baggage. This suchness or thusness describes the true nature of things rather than referring to things from the point of view of our usefulness of them. According to the understanding of the five skandhas, however, on noticing something new outside of us, we don't see the thing just as it is. Rather, we look for its value to us by immediately reacting to decide whether it is good for us, or it is bad for us, or it is neither of the two. This first impulse to sense things with respect to their usefulness to ourselves is what gets ourself involved. If the thing is judged good for us, we quickly think about how to make use of it. If it is bad for us, we quickly think of how to get rid of it. This explains a sudden urge that you may have had to pick a wildflower and make it your own. Animals appear to operate in the same manner, though they may begin by sniffing something. In truth, what things really are is not a matter of good or bad, or right or wrong, or any of the other qualities that relate to our seeing them with respect to what they can do for us. Things exist, of course, without any consideration of what we want or don't want from them. And the above does show how we come to develop our sense of self-centeredness through the use of the skandhas. Suzuki Roshi came to the States alone and had to shop for himself for several years. He said that he was apt to go home with poorly looking produce that others would have rejected. He said he did this because he felt sorry for them, for the vegetables that were bruised and not looking up to date, as it were. This sounded sorry to me back then. This sounded strange to me back then, not knowing what a bodhisattva was. Okay, thank you. Here's Jane.
Hi.
Are there any questions? Yes, Mike, or responses? Response, actually, yeah.
Thank you, Peter. It was a good talk. Your voice sounds a little hoarse. You okay?
Yes, I don't know quite understand it, but it is down there, isn't it? Yeah.
You gotta stop smoking those cigars, is what it is.
I know.
It, how do we, it seems like since we're so caught up with having to use language to describe our world to us, it seems so difficult to remind ourselves that that's not necessarily what it is. You know, even though language is very useful, as you say, I find that, you know, I'll think something and go, okay, you know, that's how I react to that object, but it seems to be so hard to put that pause in there to recognize that the word is just a convenience to identify something or tag it or something like that. I don't know, you've been doing this for a long time. Do you still find yourself getting caught up in the words you use to describe something? Or is there a way to say, hey, look, you know, this is convenient, but this isn't what this is?
It would be nice if I could say so, Mike, but, but no, this talk, of course, is from one side of things. And we lead our lives, as we do, as we all know about, because that's just what we do. That's what we're made to do, is lead our lives. But we get lost often. Not because of a philosophical reason, but because we're going too fast, or something surprises us or scares us, or something we'll get overwhelmed by things, we get tired and anxious and all kind of things that go on. And what the Buddha or the Dharma is saying is, of course, that there is something else. that something else does not replace this world. I mean, it's the same as this world. But there is a place in this world of calmness and that's why we do Zazen, is to balance our life. And so we cannot separate the two, but we can extend our understanding of things so we don't get lost in them. Nothing wrong with them, we just get lost. And so Zazen teaches us just by sitting still, hopefully every day for a while. But anyway, it has a very large effect on our lives because our lives aren't what we're anxious about or carried away by or all those things. Those are true, but there's another basis there. Yes, Spencer.
So I think about language a lot in my sitting and letting go of words. And then, concepts are built on words, right? But like concepts like good and evil and all of these things permeate my mind like words. So I try and let concepts go and words go. And when I look at my dogs, I think there's, a pureness that I have no connection to, when they sniff, they use their senses, but they don't integrate with language, right? They have some direct connection. If they sniff, they love, they hate, and we have no idea how that manifests. But I often wonder, is that the pureness of Buddha nature?
Um, well, I understand what you mean about about our pets, and of course, but that's the animals that we are closest to. Those of us who have had or do have pets, and I kind of wonder about that myself, Spencer. But it's a leap to say too much about it.
Yeah.
Because there's something that's true that there's something true that in the purity of how animals react, and we are the animals that have a special characteristic, well, different characteristic, which is our words and our language and our thoughts that are built upon them. But the basis of the language of we are all the same. We're all living beings. And so I think also like you that our pets can teach us a lot.
Thank you, Peter.
Welcome. It'd be interesting to give a downward talk saying to everybody, you should be more like animals.
We should.
It could be true. It could be true, but it may not fly in some places.
Maybe animals think and talk more than we do. We just don't understand their language.
They do have something like that, of course.
There was a Buddhist Zen master, I can't think of his name. He said, I have lived with many Zen masters in my life. Most of them were cats.
There was we lived next to a temple complex that was not Zen, but it was Tendai, and they had a special kind of Tendai. Tendai has also in Japan has 3 different sects in it, but anyway, their teacher ordained a cow. Yeah, really, true. It's true. He was famous for ordaining a cow. We were just, as
And
far
we
as
were just
doors
reading-
go, we were just 4 doors away from the
And
complex.
we were just reading in the Mountains and Water Sutra. If all you have to do in your life is find one person or half person to send the truth to bring out the truth in your life.
So it's we talked about what a half person was, but I guess that could be the
I think a cow could be a half person.
yeah,
Well,
half person, yeah,
Harvey
yeah,
certainly was.
or the opposite could be true, of course, right? We are the halves without knowing it. So anybody have anything else to? I'm sorry, Chris. Yeah, Chris. Sorry, Chris. Yeah.
So I'll say that my knowledge of Helen Keller is kind of limited to being in The Miracle Worker in high school and some medium-sized blurbs on the internet that I come across. But the one of the themes from the writings that I've read, or either what her teacher said in the play and elsewhere, is how important language is for a human, and how transformative it was for her to go from a world with no language to a world with language. And in Zen we often kind of poo-poo words and language and concepts, and I absolutely understand that. But just as we can't rely on the concepts that we make in our minds using words, or just concepts themselves that we can express with words, it's also not fair to kind of toss out the value that words and language have, especially for a human mind. And I was thinking that it's sort of similar to the Kalama Sutta, when Buddha says, "Don't rely on the words of the teaching, or don't rely on the teacher, rely on the teaching. Don't rely on the words, rely on the spirit," or something like that. That whole thing, that it's not the concepts or the language that's the problem. It's our unwillingness to see the limit to the words and the concepts, to push beyond what they are. And yet, it's, I think, fair to say that sometimes what we would call the knowledge that we can derive from words and concepts, if we have, or if we maintain an extreme preference for that, it'll form a block between our experience and what I will provisionally call true knowledge or direct knowledge, and how that's important too. And you can't give up any aspect of that, or prefer any aspect, because a half truth or a halfway appreciation is an unnecessary limitation.
Okay, well said, Chris. By the way, my mother met Helen Keller, and Helen Keller wrote on her arm, and then of course the lady who was actually after the movie. That's just one part of it. Then of course they traveled together for the rest of their lives. I don't know what the exact who died first, but anyway, and then that person would translate.
One thing I learned recently was that Annie Sullivan, the teacher, actually had an experience as a child herself that was like Helen Keller, and they thought that she was, deranged or something like that, and they kept her in, a cell essentially. And it was a woman who came by and made cookies or something, cookies or a cake or something, and just or brownies, and came to her like day after day, and then eventually she, having that contact with human compassion, then sort of branched out and was able to learn. And so when she was working at that school then after growing up herself, and Helen Keller came to her, or they came to her with the, so we've got this girl with a specific problem and we thought you might be able to help. That I'd never really appreciated that Annie Sullivan herself also had a similar upbringing, I guess, or problem.
I didn't know that. No, that's interesting, Chris, that's interesting, Chris. I didn't know that. Oh, by the way, I when you were talking, I realized that somehow in the final editing of my talk at the last minute, I lost a paragraph. A very important one, because the end of the paragraph was something that you all know already. But anyway, Dogen said, think non-thinking, or think beyond thinking. Translate two different translations of the same thing. But anyway, I said, oh my God, I forgot about Dogen. Yeah, you would have had another 2 minutes to listen to there. Jane?
I think you said,
Dogen?
yeah.
Did I say Dogen?
Well, I definitely like the think beyond thinking. I've never heard it phrased like that, but that.
Oh, yes, I
sounds
did.
great.
I'm sorry.
Good.
I guess I didn't. I went right by myself.
Yeah, he rose to the challenge when Sandy couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I said I would do it, but I knew I couldn't, but Peter did.
So I started to talk, but then I didn't. But I only had the first half, and then of course I had to make up another half, which I did yesterday, and then messed with it this morning. But it came out. I guess it came out okay. Anyway, thank you, everybody.